Hey, Ethan here. Figured I'd do a video on the Lightwave Research, or what was later known as High-End Systems Status Q lighting console. It is a PC hosted lighting console that the manual says dates from 1993 to 1997. It originally launched, I think, with Windows 3.11 software, and then eventually moved up to Windows 95 as that became normal in the computer world. Quick bit of background: I do not work in the lighting world. I'm a computer guy by day, a vintage computer hobbyist, and I've always kind of been fascinated with products from high-end systems. As a kid, seeing shows, seeing the robotic lights and everything, the track spots and telebeams at the time. So I was kind of been fascinated with it. I've owned and repaired telebeams and telebeam LED and LCD controllers, and now have some techno beams, data flashes, data flash controller. So I have some experience with control software. I consider myself more of a laser guy. Laser's kind of been the main hobby with lighting next to that. But yeah, so quick story is I kind of been looking for a status queue for a long time with the idea of taking the console and capturing the output and driving it into something like an Arduino to do MIDI to turn it into nothing more than like a control surface. So I'd watched eBay for a long time, and finally there was one console up on eBay for a while, and the price point wasn't where I wanted to be. Just kind of let it sit there, and I mean, it was up there for like a year, so finally I was like, hey, if by any chance you want to get rid of this thing, I'll offer you this amount for it. No worries if not. I'm just kind of, it's not really a useful tool, it's more of a curiosity. At the end, the guy accepted it, so it was cool. And I was headed down through that area, South Carolina, to hang with some friends from the laser show community. So that hobby. And picked up the console. There's no computer, no software, no anything. I didn't know about the software because I was kind of hoping that a bunch of the bits and pieces would be inside. Nothing was there. Got it home, and originally I emailed High-End Systems and was like, hey, by any chance do you have the schematics for it? And they replied yes, sent me the schematics, which is totally cool. Like, you know, I'm probably the first person to even email them about this console in, I don't know, 20 years or something. So with the schematics in hand, I was able to determine the pinout of the way the console connects to the computer. The console uses a DB25 cable all pinned straight through. You have to make sure you're not using like a null modem cable or a DB25 cable that only has some of the wires pinned through. So all pins have to be straight through, but in that DB25 there's 5 volts over a number of pins, a bunch of ground pins, a bunch of 12 volt pins I believe, and then there was TX and RX data. So I think it was RS485, similar to DMX512 actually. So I got an adapter hooked up to a PC, tried to fuzz it, tried to throw stuff at it. Nothing would kind of wake it up, so I assumed there was a handshake between the computer. Time passed. I didn't really touch it. I contacted anybody and everybody trying to get hold of the card that goes into a IBM PC computer that the console connects to. They're pretty much unobtainium. Like, nobody had one. So, it just sat there. I didn't really touch it for a number of years. Finally, I just got tired of it. Either something had to happen or it had to go. Kind of want to play with it, get more and more curious about it. But so I'd found a picture from a long time ago where an auction had closed in California. And it was a rack, a 19-inch rack that contained 2 of the High-End Systems computers, some of the switch boxes and stuff, and you could see that it was used for a show. Touring kind of setup. So I was able to figure out the guy's email address from the username that was the high bidder. Since the auction closed in, I think, 2008, I figured there's no way that this guy would probably still have these, but I reached out. Sure enough, had them. Didn't really care about the computers. He was indeed after the rack. So made a deal, and that kind of opened the door for actually running the console. So, I actually have 2 of the computers. The way these things were, I guess, set up in touring setups was they would stack the 2 rack mount PCs, and there was these analog switch boxes that are meant for DB25 or printers, modems, that kind of stuff. So the idea was you would hook the DMX outputs into a switch box, hook the console into a switch box, and whatever else. Then I guess you could sync them using MIDI, so that like maybe one chases the other, but I'm not really sure that that's a feature. I didn't really remember that from the manual, but. And the idea is if all hell breaks loose, you could basically manually switch over all your DMX outputs and all the console from one computer to the other as kind of your failover. So that having two computers kind of opened the door for a bit more experimentation, and so having two computers opened the door for fault tolerance in the sense of, will these things actually work? So when I got them, I think CD-ROMs are pretty much bad. One of the computers, it was acting very weird. So after some time, I pulled out the oscilloscope and I was looking at the DC voltages coming from the power supply. And actually, I was originally looking at the DMX output, trying to figure out why I couldn't seem to get any of the lights to respond right. If it was something I was doing in software, or there should have been a response. And it turns out there's just so much DC noise from the power supply, so it seems like the filtering caps are bad. So that one actually needs to be torn down, and I probably need to change out the filter caps. The systems that came from this setup, which I have seen pictures of other ones that were not as cool looking. These are backplane industrial computers. It's the same kind of PC that would be used for telephony and some other business applications. So there's a backplane that's just nothing more than ISA and some PCI slots. The motherboard, which is a standard called PICMG, that's stuck in there. And these ones are a Pentium 200. So imagine an expansion card that's the entire motherboard. The whole computer's on that. Then in the case of these, there's the two actual cards that are the interface boards. So originally I think this was supposed to be called the Cyberlight controller, but they ended up renaming it Status Q, and then I think there was actually probably a Cyberlight LCD controller, which is the rack mount standalone controller. So the way these systems work is there's actually an ISA card, and it's kind of like the base thing that interfaces the system to the DB25 goes to the console itself. Then there's a DB9. The DB9 breaks out into two DMX512 interfaces. So each card can drive two universes of DMX, and it can host the console. If you want to expand the system out and add more universes, you just add more cards. And there is I don't know if it's a sync line or something. There's some sort of bus that goes between those on two wires. And it's pretty cool. There's fuses in there for the DC power that they're feeding down over the DB25. I wonder if anyone ever plugged in the cable to the wrong port or fried anything, but because you could possibly get it on the printer or the modem port. But yeah, so they're pretty nice built cards. In my original experimentation, I actually tried to disassemble the software that's in the chip that runs in the console. I looked up like how the baud rate's set. I did not have much luck with that. It's a Motorola embedded processor. I think it's more like the 6805 or something down that line. These here are probably 68,000 or something. 68331, so close. And so yeah, overall, there's actually a Molex connector for power to be fed into the one that's feeding the console. You can imagine it's kind of a high draw for probably for the LEDs and stuff. The systems also have, I think it's a MIDI man. It slips my mind. It's MQX32 MIDI card. The MIDI card can do, I think it's 2 MIDI in, 2 MIDI out. Once again, similar to the DB9, it has a fan out cable that I do not have. I've been lazy. I haven't built one. I think it's just a DB15 connector, so it's pretty easy. And the pin out does exist out there. It also has RCA in and out for SMPTE timecode. And I think I have at least 1 or 2 pieces of equipment that could generate it, but I've never tried it. The software totally does support time-coded shows, and I think it can do both MIDI timecode or it could do SMPTE, which is pretty cool. It'd be kind of interesting to try that, but I think it'd be a lot of work to build a show using it. Oh, what else? The console has a couple latches. This lifts up. The struts in it are, I guess the gas is leaked or whatever, so it won't hold itself up. Pretty well built. It has place for floppy disk, manuals, mouse, keyboard, and some other stuff, with a warning of not putting small things in there, metal pieces, because my guess is if you were to flip it up, obviously they could roll around up in the circuit boards. There was a cover that covered the boards that I removed underneath this when I was poking at trying to reverse engineer the protocol. And I never put it back because the foam was starting to get a little bit sticky or tacky. The closed-cell polyethylene foam, over time, I guess it absorbs moisture and gets kind of gross. I did get the system up and running. Since the lighting console here, I believe it's Legends. It's Legends of something in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina was its home. The computers were toured, I think, out of LA or somewhere over there. And the files on the hard drive, I'll actually put some links underneath it, but I was able to figure out the artist and stuff and some shows that it was on, and I think there's a video on YouTube that those computers are actually running. And the shows were a bunch of Cyberlights and a bunch of studio spots or something. So pretty powerful show, big fixtures, so that is really cool. Yeah, DMX Studio colors and Cyberlights. This is a really early console, and a lot of the high-end systems, early fixtures could do their own Lightwave protocol, as well as DMX 512, because this is kind of the dawn of DMX. So these cards can actually speak both of those, and Lightwave protocol is addressed much cleaner, I guess you would say, where you just give the fixture I think a simple number, and everything else is kind of worked out from there. I don't know how much different the actual protocols are, but yeah, it looks like they were actually running the Cyberlights on Lightwave, and then they were running the studio colors on DMX on their shows. I will post all the files, so if maybe there's like someone who's a giant fan of the artist, and I will post all the data off of here for the public, just so you can have it if for some reason you want to look through it. But I'll do a separate video on the actual software and programming a show on this thing. I did poke around a bit. I don't have experience with the other consoles. I mostly use the MIDI style controllers with, Freestyler DMX, or I played with Martin MPC/Onyx a little bit, but so I don't know if it's usual. It seems like kind of maybe a long reach for some of the preset buttons that are up here, like the flash buttons and stuff, instead of them being down here like some of the other consoles have. The knobs and stuff, everything feels really high quality. The buttons feel nice. There's definitely direct access to so many features of the lights, which is really cool. Obviously, it's tuned more to the fixtures of that time. Trackball, when it's in the software, it actually operates as a mouse to the computer. Internally, the trackball, I think I think it's identical to that of a Centipede arcade machine. So it shares the same part as the arcade machines. Both hard drives, I think one hard drive didn't work, one did, or one was marginal with some errors on it, but I was able to copy off most of the data. The systems had the same data on them, which makes sense. It's a Pentium 1 with 96 megabytes of RAM, and I think like a 3 gig hard drive. The actual console has mounts on the rear, and there's a bracket that I did not get with it that would hold actually CRT or two. And so in those days you'd have like a 14-inch or whatever little VGA CRTs that sat back here with the computer off to the side and a rack. So I think that's mostly it for the hardware. If there's any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below, or I guess any memories using it. I don't know if it was considered good or bad at this point in time when this was made. PC software was pretty unreliable. So I'm sure there was a lot of nervousness there, so that's where a dedicated hardware or purpose-built computer might have been a little bit more, people feel a bit more like it's more reliable and trustworthy. Windows 95 and Windows 3.11 was a little bit more shaky. Quality-wise, everything feels really nice. The switches feel really nice. Like I mentioned, the rotary encoders feel great. It's missing a few of the fader caps, unfortunately, but all of them seem to work fine. It's actually really nice. Obviously, I don't think anyone would use it. The actual software for fixture definitions are built in and they're pre-programmed. So you only get the library that's there, which is mostly high-end fixtures. There are some Martins. I actually have a pair of Martin RoboScan 1220s. They're massively, like, 150-pound things. I dream of trying to switch them over to switch mode ballast, so to shed, you know, like 100 pounds out of them. But the China vendors that I find that sell the ballast, they want like $400, which is nowhere near worth it for the fixtures. But I dream of the day of converting them all to. I think you could probably eliminate maybe like 80 pounds out of them, 100 pounds by removing the two transformers. But yeah, so the actual software on this can drive some Martin products and some other stuff of the time. And there's no way to edit that. And I asked high-end, like, hey, would you all release the source code? And they were like, no. So even finding compilers and stuff to rebuild it. I was thinking it'd be kind of funny to add some more modern fixtures to it, but no go. Yeah, and reversing it, I guess, you know, I never bothered. I probably will not bother going down the path of trying to continue to figure out if it just talks like DMX 512 back and forth or how these things communicate, because basically I just don't see any of these other consoles out there, so it's not like there's the whole bunch of them waiting to be turned into MIDI controllers or something. And now that I have the computers, my curiosity's kind of been tickled on that, so the itch has been tickled, so yeah, I'll probably just let it go, find someone else who wants to do home and try to get a Hog 3. I think that's the next one I want to play with. But yeah, overall, pretty cool. Neat. Some of this is made of wood and whatnot, so some scrapes on it, but high end. So check the other video for actually, I guess, programming on it and using it a little bit. I had to use the manual to figure it out. I still have to reference it a bit here and there. But yeah, I'll go ahead and post that link down at the bottom as well. Have a good one.